27b?
We are on 27b1. In fact, that's what Hashem wants from all the Jewish people.
Yeah, of course.
To be one. Okay, let's go. Says the Gemara. Barishona.
Where are we? B2. Oh, Barishona. Bottom left on 27b1. Over here.
No, top left.
First line, you just said Barishona Haita.
Yeah.
That's the bottom left over here. Look.
No, up here. The first one, there's a few of them.
There's another one.
Yeah. See? 5 lines down. Barishona in the beginning. Hayu menichim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Et hamugmar tachat choli ma'ayim metim. So when we're learning now all the laws of burial, of avelut, and we are now kind of entering into the foray of the way that they would do things in the beginning versus the way that they changed. So we'd already mentioned a few examples of that before, of having the person open the casket, yani. That's how it used to be in Judaism. And then they would only open up for the rich and not for the poor, because the poor people, many times they were ravaged by famine. So they didn't want to show the face. So they would cover the faces of the poor. Poor people were embarrassed. They said, you know what? We'll cover everybody's face. And many things like that. First they would take out the rich on the dargash, and the poor people would go out on a beer, on the stretcher. And when that was embarrassing for the poor people, they decided we're going to pull everybody out on the beer. Barishona in the beginning. Hayu menichim. To not embarrass the poor people. In the beginning, hayu menichim et hamugmar tachat choli. Oh, we don't have the Zoom.
Oh, listen.
In the beginning, hayu menichim. In the beginning, we used to put the underneath the casket or the beer that they were taking the person out. Et hamugmar tachat choli me'ayim metim. They would have some sort of burning incense, and the purpose of the incense was to be able to counteract the fact that people that had a certain kind of intestinal, whether it was a parasite or a disease, it would be a terrible smell that would come from.
To not embarrass people.
Exactly. So we're going to have many examples of this now in the Gemara. So as an example, the Gemara is going to tell us that 27b1 at the top, they would light the incense under the people that were sick with the choli ma'ayim. The people who were alive, who had this problem with their intestines, were now embarrassed that this is now coming up. Number one, they're embarrassed that as a group of people, this is something that is being drawn attention to. Number two, they're thinking to themselves, when it's his time to go, they're going to be putting the thing, it's going to smell, everyone's going to know that they're trying to cover something up. It's like when you go in the bathroom and there's no smell, everything's safe. You go in the bathroom and it smells like roses, you know that there was issues. Yes.
But why are you saying that every single beer would then have the incense?
Correct.
No one was embarrassed.
So then no one was embarrassed. They would light the incense for everyone, and that way no one would stick out. Barishona hayu matbilim in the beginning. They would dip the kelim al gabe nidot metot. The halacha is.
But didn't we say only in the public area, not in the private area?
What do you mean?
The incense? We talked about you could do the incense.
That's incense in the house of the mourner. This is to cover a smell. Yeah, on the way to the funeral. Okay. Says the Gemara, in the beginning they would dip the dishes of all of the nidot metot, which means that when people would pass away, so if someone prior to passing away was during their cycle, during their period, so they have halacha of nidah. In the time of the temple where we required ritual purity, so anyone that was a nidah at the time, anything that they touched in their time of nidah would need to be purified. So they would dip, let's say, the vessels, they would dip them in the mikveh, and then it would become purified. So let's say a woman passed away in the middle of her time of nidah. So now anything that she touched needs to be dipped. So in the beginning, not the bed. Well, you could if it was something that needed to be dipped. So not a mattress,
Right.
but the actual frame itself.
The frame, I understand. What about the mattress?
The mattress was not something that, some things are not mekabel tumah, some things are mekabel tumah. So not everything is mekabel tumah. But things that are mekabel tumah, they would need to be tobel.
Is there anything that can mekabel tumah that is not dippable?
Yes, there is. Numerous things. That's in Masechet Kelim. There's an entire Masechet on that. Okay. And anyway, says the Gemara. By the beginning, they would do it for anyone that was a nidah. What happened now? V'hayu nidot chayot. The women that were now in their ritual impurity were embarrassed. Number one, they're thinking about the fact that it's drawing attention to the fact that they're impure now, right now, and they're embarrassed. Or they're embarrassed because it makes people think about the fact that they are currently. So either one was an embarrassing thing. So what did they do? Hitkinu, the Chachamim made a law, shiyu matbilin al gabe kol anashim. Any woman that died, they would take the kelim, the vessels that she would have, her brush, her tool, or whatever tools that she would have, she'd be using, they would dip everything, and then they would use it. Why? To protect the embarrassment of the people who were, the women who were nidah. Now the Gemara shifts over to the exact same example by a man. Says the Gemara, in the beginning, they would dip the kelim, the vessels, zavim etim. The same way, when a woman would have her cycle, she would be rendered impure. So too, certain kinds of emissions that came from a man will also render a person impure. And since the person will be rendered impure on the basis of that, right? So therefore, we would have to dip any of the vessels that the Zav had come into contact with. What happened? The men that had suffered such kinds of emissions now felt embarrassed or self-conscious about it. So what did the Chachamim do? Hitkinu shumat bilin al gabe al gavakol. They decided they should make all the men dip all the kelim, even if they were not Zav, because of the honor of the Zavim Chaim. This is wild. In the beginning, it was more difficult for the family of the dead person, the expenses that it would cost to be able to make the funeral, than the loss itself of the man. Yani somebody dies, and the whole family is going to Majnun, not about the death, but about how expensive it was to bury him. They would bury them in very refined clothing, beautiful casket. It could cost a lot of money. Today, by the way, the biggest scam in the world is you go to Undertaker, they sell you a coffin, they could sell coffins for $300,000.
And among the black people and the poor people of America, they convinced them that they should leave the body there for a month of kavod, but they charge by the day. And these poor people that have no money,
and they convinced them it's the honor of the Met as well. It's
for a month, and these people go into debt to leave the body there for a month
at their most vulnerable period, right? So it can be a very skeevy situation. Mm-hmm. So at the time, it's so funny how you have old problems, new problems, and then you see that they had the same problem back then, right? People are making weddings now they can't afford. They were making funerals they couldn't afford. Okay, so anyway, you had this difficulty, and it got so bad that people did not have the money to be able to put on a funeral that was appropriate or mechubad. Ad shayu kirovav menichin oto uborchin. You had the relatives; they would leave the dead body and run away. Let the community bury him. I don't have the wherewithal to be able to give $10,000 for this and $5,000 for that, and it could be a big problem. You think to yourself, how expensive is it to bury someone in the ground? You think you dig a hole, you stick them in. Go find out how much it costs to go buy a piece of real estate as of last week.
It was $19,000 for bring it and do it that was the lowest you could do.
Lowest. Yeah.
That doesn't include nothing.
And by the way, 19,000 is in Staten Island. Very low real estate.
60K.
What? All in?
For the Shiva, $60,000.
$60,000 for the Shiva.
We didn't do the tombstone.
Now I want you to think about.
No tombstone.
So I want you to think about the opposite, by the way.
20 more.
In terms of halacha, how much should this cost?
How much should it cost?
How much should it cost?
Very small.
Nothing. I mean, whatever it costs, should cost nothing. Also, the Shiva, you have people putting on food, and they're getting catering for the Shiva. What do you have to put out of the Shiva? Nothing. So we're in this situation where we've done it to ourselves, and then we set a standard, and then everyone needs to meet the standard. It's insanity. So listen to the Gemara's response to this insanity. It says the Gemara like this: Ad shayu kirovav, the people would leave their dead on the side and let the community deal with it. Ad sheba Rabban Gamliel, till Rabban Gamliel came along, v'nahag kalut rosh be'atzmo. Kalut rosh, they translated it over here, and they say treated it lightly. Kalut rosh is much more than that. Kalut rosh is like when you're making something into nothing. Like a person is Yom Kippur and they're making fun of it. That's kalut rosh. Letzanut is always put together with kalut. Scoffers are put together with kalut rosh. It's not just that you're not giving it the weight. It's like you're making it light. You're really making it dismissive. Until Rabban Gamliel came and he was nahag kalut rosh be'atzmo on himself. Tosafot, for 1 second, turn to the other page, and you see on the side in Hebrew, Tosafot, v'nahag kalut. What does that mean? Shetzivake, how could he do kalut rosh with himself if he's dead? Shetzivaken b'shat pitirato, when he was dying, he said, v'yatza b'chli pishtan. They brought him out to his burial, and he was wearing a shroud made out of plain linen. No silk, no Armani, no Prada, no leather, linen. They would make it from the flax, they would grow it, it would cost nothing. Okay? So he made it very cheap. So there's two opinions. What does it mean that he was noheg kalut rosh be'atzmo? That he was, he mocked, he let himself be worthless, so to speak. One opinion is that he gave them the command that that's how they should bury him.
So if it's good enough for him,
Instantly. He's the high, not high. Highest, he's the Nasi.
Okay. So
He's like the king of the Jews.
He set the new standard.
And he comes from the Davidic line of kings, incredibly wealthy. Imagine the richest, most important guy is now buried in a linen shroud. So everyone could bury in a linen shroud. What does the Gemara say? And everyone else went out and they now I always loved thinking this Gemara. You know why I loved it? Because I love thinking about the various people. You have the next guy comes out, he says, if it's good for the rabbi, well, I'm going to be better now than the rabbi? I'm going to wear Prada when he wore linen? Aib. So some guys, they changed the minhag of spending so much and being lavish. Why? Because they didn't want to show up Rambam Gamliel. Then you had some people who could never afford it, and then they said, Baruch Hashem, I have no stress. And then you had the middle crowd that didn't have the money, but pretended that they had the money. And they told everyone, Rabban Gamliel, if it's good enough for him, I don't want to, do more than the rabbi. Meanwhile, they're like, thank you, Hashem. You think of all the different kinds of Jews that switch their behavior because of the sensitivity of the rabbi. Says Tosafot, second reason, V'yesh mefarshim, what's the other interpretation? Someone that he was sitting Shiva for. So someone else passed away. Right? B'chayav, in his lifetime. And he buried that person in the shrouds of linen. Says Tosafot v'lashon be'atzmo, but it says that he was flippant is the right word, is the word I was looking for. He was flippant with his own honor. Nahag kalut rosh be'atzmo, on himself. Tosafot says, if I have to choose between these two answers, either that he buried someone from his family, or that's what he gave them, his last will and testament, he told them to bury him, I'd rather say it means that they told him to bury him. Why? Because it says be'atzmo, in himself. Now, I was thinking that you could still say the second answer of Tosafot, which means that he was flippant, even though it was burying a relative, because whose honor is it whether or not the guy is well-dressed? Mine. That's the whole reason why everyone else was leaving, because they were embarrassed. So if he buried his own relative with something small, it's his own kalut rosh. But he was saying that even though I'm a rich guy, I don't have to do this. I must say this because Zecher Tzadik Livracha, we say whenever you mention a tzaddik, you always say it for a blessing. And we say that about dead tzaddikim. But it's really also true about reminding and recording and saying over a tzaddik in a positive way. And I have to tell this story, I've said it many times before. Actually, maybe I'm not sure if I should say the name. Maybe I won't say the name. When I was going to do a wedding for my daughter, I went to a wedding hall. And at the wedding hall, I'm telling the guy, listen, I'm a rabbi, I know you have all these packages and packages and packages. The guy's like, here's a plate. This is the worst item for a man ever. You want to hear the worst man conversation? You're going to appreciate this, Lillian. Got the table. The guy says, "Oh, we have this, we have the other thing." He goes, "I have also the no the no, I forget the name of it. Runner? Is it a runner? What's the plate? Charger. He goes, I have a charger for you. I have a charger. I was like, what's a charger? He goes, it's a plate. I said, it's a plate? He goes, yeah. I said, but you charge me for plates. He goes, no, this is a plate that you put under the plate. I said, what do you put on the plate that you put under the plate? He says, nothing. The plate. I was like, so the plate has no purpose? He said, no. I said, and you're going to charge me for a plate that has no purpose? Not even going to get dirty? He goes, yes. I said, that's why you call it a charger. Right? So I tell the guy, listen to the end of the story. I tell the guy, right? I'll be here all week. I tell the guy I don't need the charger. I said, I'm a rabbi. Yeah, you got to charge.
But I got to charge you.
I'm canceling the charge. I tell the guy, listen, you know something? I want to do a nice wedding. I don't have to go overboard. I'm not impressing anybody. You know, I'm not outshining my friends who had weddings at the Pierre and at the Plaza with my McDonald Avenue. You know, the what's it called? I forget the name of the Palace. You know, whatever it was called. You know, they understand. No one is expecting. No one wants it. I'm perfect, and I'm not too haughty. Anyway, the guy says, "Well, come. Let me show you." Anyway, he comes to outside. He shows me. He says, "This is a wedding we did last night." He says, "I have all kinds. I have the kind I talked to you about, very fancy." Because I have this kind, this was from last night. I look around. I wouldn't make my daughter's 3rd birthday party like this. Okay? Like cheap tablecloth, not even plain. No, worse than paper. If it's paper, it's at least paper. It's like, no, like material, but like it doesn't hang normally. Like, you know, it's like defective material, like clingy to the table, right? Just, and very thin. And the flowers on the table look like, you know, when you go to the bodega and the guy has run out of all flowers, and there's the one bouquet left that no one wanted, and you go to the guy, you're like, really, $19.99? He goes, oh, it's a mistake. It was supposed to be $9.99. Sorry, mechila. He changed a few. That was the bouquet. Look, little bouquets on the tables. Very, very. I said, this is, you know, I don't think my consuegro. It was a little too, you know. I said something nicer than this. You know, I said, I'm sure this was a very budget wedding. The guy says, actually, I want you to know. He says, the person who made this wedding is one of the richest people in the Syrian community. And why did he make the wedding like this? Because he's connected with all the religious people. And you have all these people, not to embarrass them, who feel like they have to make fancy weddings. He says, but if the fanciest guy could make a wedding with the clingy tablecloth and the garbage bodega flowers, then every kollel guy and every rebbe and every guy who's struggling in business, he could say, you know what? My wedding, it was at least as nice as Batikha, this guy, and he's richer than everybody. What a beautiful thing. And I said to my wife, I said, you know why it's beautiful? Not because of the guy. I think we would all do that, but not because we're Sadiqin, because we don't care. Would our wife and would our daughter agree?
I don't know.
See, if he did it, that means that his wife and child and kid were also on the same page. That's very beautiful.
Got on the same page.
I think they were. He's not such a hard guy.
He raised them well.
He's not such a hard guy. Exactly. He raised them well. Now, this story, the reason why I'm bringing this is because this Rabban Gamliel story is this man. Rabban Gamliel says, you know what I'm going to use? I'm going to use the cheapest item so everyone can afford it. And I'm going to break the stigma and the status symbol that this is. The Gemara ends, and I'll come back to you, Gemara ends by saying, V'amar Rav Papa says, V'ha'idna, and now that now in my time, Rav Papa is a Amora, Rabban Gamliel is one of the Tanaim. V'ha'idna, now Nahug Alma, the minhag is, Afilu b'tzarda barzuza, even in a shroud made out of canvas, never mind linen. Canvas that costs 1 zuz.
Like a burlap.
Well, a burlap sack. Bury him, it still says potatoes on it. Okay? You understand? So the Rav Papa is saying that he lowered the bar, and now, you know what they're using? The cheapest possible item. And I think what Rav Papa is trying to communicate is, look at the people. Once you broke this idea that you have to show off how you're burying a dead person, what did the people? They came to the conclusion, this is not something I need to spend money on. Who am I impressing? I'm looking to impress someone at a funeral? I remember once, Shema, I was at a situation, someone passed away, and they asked when's the funeral. I said tomorrow morning, you have to do it as soon as possible. And one of the women said, I have nothing to wear. Now, to be sure, that's a defense mechanism. She's trying to think about anything other than that. But some people, they need genuine. They, how am I going to look? How am I going to look at that, Majnun? But once it was broken, so it was broken. So Rav Papa says, and look at how it worked. Now, in my day, even for one zuz, they'll bury. Nathan.
The city of Arad in Israel is a development town with very, very poor people. And they realized 30 years ago that people were going to go into debt for bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. So the city decreed, and everyone agreed, that there would be one day of bar mitzvah and one day of bat mitzvah for the whole year. Everyone in the town was invited, and everyone got one table. And that's how they were able to make it equivalent for absolutely everybody. One party.
What does that mean? Oh, so whatever day in the year was your bar mitzvah, didn't matter. We chose one day.
It was the nationalized bar mitzvah system.
Then there was one guy who paid more, so it should be on his day.
But they did it, and I think they still do it, so that people can actually afford. They'd have their one table, and that was that.
Beautiful. I think in every community they have to figure out. Some places have laws about how many people you're allowed to invite to the wedding. By the way, it's a crazy thing to think about, but how many people are invited to the wedding, they don't want to be there, and you don't want them to be there. But no one has had a Rabban Gamliel moment where Rabban Gamliel said, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. If everyone was allowed 300, 400, 500 people, then what would happen? You'd cut it at that, right? That's what you do. You cut it there. If there's no things, you have to invite everybody. But again, you don't want them there, and they don't want to be there. So we're living in this crazy, demented situation where you have to send them an invite, and they have to get the invite, and they're like, oh my God, another wedding. Now they have to go to the wedding and smile at the wedding. They don't want to be at the wedding. You don't want them at the wedding. And you have to pay for them to come to the wedding that you don't want them at, and they don't want to be at, and they're not going to eat at. Lunacy. We need Rabban Gamliel. Okay, says the Gemara. So let's just review. The Mishnah said a halacha. We do not put the bed down, the beer down in the road. What are we talking about? We're talking about when? First was the anybody else. We don't put the bed down on the road on Chol HaMoed so that they should not eulogize. The minute you're putting the beer down, people are going to start eulogizing. Yeah. So that was said by men, but that was only on Chol HaMoed. On women, we said they wouldn't put the beer down at any time, because we said, as we'll get to it in just a bit, it was not considered kavod for the woman to be put down on a beer in the street in front of everybody. So they would just hold the beer up, and that's how they would do it. Okay, now
also up because of the.
We're going to get to it. We're going to come back to it. That's the next page. The Gemara says like this. Amar Rav Papa. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa continues. He's on a roll. In Moed, bifnei Talmid Chacham. When it comes to a Talmid Chacham that passed away, in Moed, there's no Chol HaMoed. What does it mean? There's no Chol. Of course there's Chol HaMoed. It just means that the prohibition of Chol HaMoed, of eulogizing somebody, does not apply for a Talmid Chacham, for a great Torah scholar. So even though on Chol HaMoed normally we would not do a eulogy for a Talmid Chacham, they'll do a eulogy even on Chol HaMoed. The Chol Sheken, and even more so for sure, Chanukah and Purim, which are on a lower standard than Chol HaMoed, you for sure would on Chanukah and Purim also do a eulogy for a Talmid Chacham. Says the Rav Papa, V'hani mili, when did we say that we bypass Chol HaMoed, Chanukah and Purim? When did we say that we do that? Only bifanav, in front of him. If the body is here. Aval shelo bifanav, but if he's not here, he's not present, then we do not break Chol HaMoed's happy spirit by delivering eulogies if the body is not present here in front of us. Any? Really? Rav Kana sapti Rav Zvid ben Naharda, bepum Nahara. Rav Kana, when Rav Zvid passed away from Naharda, so it's very far away, he, in Pum Nahara, in the city, way far away, he said a eulogy for him, and it was on Chol HaMoed. You just told me you could only say a eulogy for even for a Talmid Chacham on Chol HaMoed if the body's here. he said a eulogy for Rav Zvid, even though he was in Pum Nahara and the body was in Nahar Da. Answers the Gemara. Rav Papi said, Rav Papi and Rav Papa. This is his cousin from Latin America. Amar Rav Papi, Yom Shimu'ah Hava. It was the day where he heard it. So in other words, the news came to town on this day that Rav Zvid had passed away. So since the news was fresh,
Already, it's
the same way you tear when you hear it.
The body, it's
Yeah,
very
exactly.
symbolic.
So when the body's not coming here,
that spirit.
hearing about it
Right.
is like the moment, is like the presence of the body. So Yom Shimu'ava, they found out on Chol HaMoed. Uchi b'fanav dami. So that's considered as if it's b'fanav, and therefore he was allowed to eulogize him, even though he was on the other side of Bavel, he's allowed to eulogize him because it was on the day. Now just to be clear, on the day over here doesn't mean on the same day as the passing.
When they heard.
Yeah, and it's a bigger chidush. Let's say he passed away 3 days ago. They only found out now. So even though he's already buried in the other city,
On the day you hear.
and on the day that we hear,
That place.
it's as if he's here, and it's as if he's not buried.
It's tzaddik.
Right. Okay? Katami Chacham. Says the Gemara. Kibefanav dami. Let's now go and describe the various elements of the usage, the terminology of the words that are used in conjunction with hesped. Amar Ula. Ula said, hesped al lev. Whenever we use the word hesped, how do we usually translate the word hesped? Eulogize. Okay? So we have it in this week's parasha. Lispod lisara v'libkota. Lispod means to eulogize. Hesped al lev means in the Torah when the person is beating on their chest. Okay? Out of sadness. Because the pasuk says al shadayim sofdim, on their breasts, the women that were mourning, they would beat their breasts.
You're not talking about the Yemenite criers.
That is who these women are, yes.
Okay.
So when they would cry, when the women would mourn, this is how they would do it. Al shadayim sofdim, they would beat their breast in anguish. Tipuach, one of the things it says that they would be tipuach would be that they would clap. One opinion says not that they would clap, but rather that they would slap their hands. By the way, you see when people get bad news, what do? We don't even know why we do that. This was part of the ancient process of mourning. Or people would go, what are you clapping for? It was applause, right? Tipuach, either clapping in the hand or clapping on the thigh. Kilus, what does kilus mean? I can't believe it. Stamping of defeat, okay? So in the mourning process, there were these three terms. Hesped was beating on the chest, Tipuach was clapping the hands or the thigh, and Kilus was stomping the feet. Tan Rabbanan, our rabbis taught us, lo yekales b'sandal ela b'min'al. If you're stamping in mourning, the person should not stamp b'sandal with a sandal. I love how sandal is sandal, okay? Ela b'min'al. Which is rather you should do the stamping with a shoe. Why? Sakana. What we were worried about is a sandal. Yeah, exactly. A sandal is something that's not stable. You're sitting there stamping in anger your foot, flip flop, you twist your ankle. Who knows? Next thing you know, you got to see Dr. Fenster. It's a problem, right? So the answer, my friends, gotta send that to him. The answer, my friends, is the Torah was worried, even in a moment of extreme mourning. We're worried about the guy, twisting his ankle or hurting his foot. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Avel kevan shenina rosho. Right, once he nods his head, like thank you, Hazak Baruch for the comforting. Shuv em menachamim rashayin leshev etzlo. They're no longer anymore allowed to sit with him anymore after he's given them that symbol. So let's take a look over here. Where is it here?
It's not dictated by the time, though?
Hold on a second. Just want to show you the Rashi. Okay, so it's 5 lines into the middle wide lines here. You see? So you see how you got 3 Rashi lines? Mm-hmm. Thin, fatter, and then fattest? Mm-hmm. So go to the middle one. Yani the top is the 12 is the 12.5 Ozempic.
Yeah.
The middle over here is the 5 Ozempic. The bottom at 2.5 is the widest. Avel Kivan deminanea. Pretty soon, Oban will take care of everything. Aver, kivan deminanea rosho. Once he nods his head, mechzi keman deminachem nafshe. He already looks like someone who's comforted himself. Okay? Ve'omer hakol olech el makom echad. Ve'en hamenachamim resha'in leshiv etzlo, sharei nichem atzmo. Once the guy got to a place when he's like, look, you know, they're going to a better place, they're not suffering, they're in Shamayim, he's with my grandmother, you know, all that kind of thing. When a person says those words, he shows he's already arrived at a place of being comforted. The mourners, we don't want them sitting there anymore. So I was trying to understand,
That's interesting.
what's the, you know what the answer is? You see sometimes a mourner, the people sitting with him, they get him to a good place. And someone comes in, they're like, I can't believe what happened. You know, the guy's like, fall off the cliff again.
The whole purpose of Shiva is to comfort the mourner.
Reflect.
Once you've achieved the objective, get out.
That's exactly the Nikuda over here. So the Gemara is telling you already, not just, listen, it's a good word to the wise. Yeah, don't drag the guy down again. Shuv en menachamim rasha'in. Rasha'in means they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to sit there anymore. They have to go. Just a fascinating.
Spend so much time at your house.
Sorry?
When I went to the Shiva,
Okay.
we stayed.
You stayed because he didn't get there yet. He was even. Yeah, but when I was there,
This is hard stuff to
yeah. But it's
practice.
well, you know what I love.
message is good.
I love that the Gemara is illustrating page after page after page of the most wild level of sensitivity.
Go ahead.
We're worried about the woman who's in her period thinking that, the man who had an emission thinking this, the poor guy who's, you know, the other guy, what he's wearing.
Answering things you would never ask.
Every
Like,
single bit.
avoiding questions.
And each time, by the way, we mandate the practice. It's not like we say to the poor guy, look, if you can't afford it, it's okay. Like halacha,
we
you
made
don't
a
have to do it.
rule, no.
Nobody's doing it. The rich guy, no,
You're right.
get the Chanel bag,
You're right.
take it off. Take it off. Right? No Hermes leather
No,
dargashes.
you were lowering your level. You went to shit.
No Hermes dargashes. Okay? Says the Gemara. Ve'amar Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan says, Hakol chayivim la'amod mipnei nasi. Everyone has a hayuv to stand in front of the nasi. Chutz me'avel lecholeh. Except for someone who's sitting shiva, and as well for what's it called? And a sick person. Okay? Obviously the sick person, because one would assume, because he can't, okay? And the Avel, because he has an obligation to sit. So everyone else has to show kavod. But the Avel, because he has an obligation to sit, right? So we say, you know, he doesn't have to get up. He's sitting specifically, right?
Getting up for what, Rabbi?
Sorry?
For the Nasi.
For the Nasi, yeah. Okay? And the Choleh, simply because
It's like
you know,
kavod,
he
right?
can't, no, he can't, he's sick.
Right.
Okay? Now, there's other opinions that talk about this concept from a perspective of if they got up, then we would have to engage in the process of getting permission to get them to sit again. So therefore, what we do is we avoid all of
Where
that.
does that situation occur, though? Getting up for the Nasi, where
Let's-
would that occur? In what situation?
Let's say the Nasi walks in
To,
into the Shiva.
but it says the Shiva guy doesn't have to stand up,
Correct?
and neither does an ill person.
That's the point.
So who's standing up for the Nasi?
Everyone else. All the other comforters.
So if they was sitting around,
Yeah.
they would get up and cover.
The comforters are getting up, the Avel not.
So that's like,
But this is, I think, going broader than that. It's saying that in all situations, everyone always has an obligation to stand before the Nasi. Yeah. Why? Even though the guy might be older than him. He might even be a bigger Talmid Chacham than him. In fact, ironically, we had exactly that example with Rabban Gamliel in the beginning of Masechet Berachot. Remember that? With Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua, with the disagreement about what day Yom Kippur was? Yeah. So you see, even though Rabbi Yoshua was a wiser, older statesman, rabbi, blah, 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 still, the Nasi, the name, the fact that he had the office, the respect for the office demanded that Rabbi Yoshua would show him that kavod. Okay, says the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Avel Yom Rishon Asur Le'echol Lechem Mishelo. On the first day, he's not allowed to eat his own bread. That means, as we know, the custom is that we bring him a meal of the mourners, and that comes from someone else's food. Okay? We already learned this before. Because the Pasuk said to Yecheskel, if you remember, we covered this already. The Pasuk said to Yecheskel, God said to Yecheskel, I don't want you mourning. Don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do this. What do we learn? That he's describing all things of mourning, and he's telling him specifically not to do this, illustrating that anybody else who was a mourner would have to do that. He tells him, I don't want you mourning. So as an example. So don't go to work. And don't, right? So anything he told him not to do, you could learn that a mourner can't do. Okay? Because we had this earlier.
From Tuvim, things that were done in olden days.
Covering the head, remember that? And the standing like this, and what color, all the clothing. So all of that, we brought this pasuk. Says the pasuk, "Velechem anashim lo tochel." Don't eat the bread of other people. What do you see from there? That a regular avel eats the bread of other people only. Okay, not his own. Right. Okay, so therefore, lechem on the first day, the person does not eat his own bread. Says the Gemara, Rabbi and Rav Yosef, Machlefi seudatai ulahadadi. Rabbi and Rav Yosef, when he was in mourning, what did he do? You know, he gave his food to the other guy, and the other guy gave him his food. Where else do we have this idea? Anyone remember where else we have this idea?
The clothes.
Huh?
The bigadim.
No, where else do we have this idea of the meal, of switching the meal?
The other thing is a switching too.
Yes, we had it with the ripping. Yes.
He wears it, I wear it.
Correct, but that's not.
No, I'm just
well, you'll see in a minute. One second.
The switch, not the item.
The switch, not that. We'll come back to it. One second. Right? We have this, ironically, in the case of mishloach manot. You had people, they had to give a seudah. They were so poor, they didn't have enough food for themselves. I'm going to give you food from. What do? No problem. I give you my food, you give me yours. Now, I'm eating, you gave me mishloach manot, I have what to eat. I give you mishloach manot, you have what to eat. If we did this on purpose in the beginning, we said, listen, I'm going to give you yours, you're going to give me mine. They wouldn't be allowed to eat it.
Premeditated. No.
Why? Because premeditated means that this is my food.
It's a gimmick.
We swapped food. So the same way I couldn't eat my food before, I can't eat my food now. So long as it's not stipulated in that way, they wouldn't be machlif sudatayu, and then they would be able to eat from someone else's meal and not their own.
Those types of gimmicks are not allowed anywhere. Like if you're borrowing someone's taled or tefillin, right? Aren't you they're supposed to give it to them? Or the lulav example, you're giving it to the person, and then they use it, and then they give it back to you under their own free will, but you can't.
You can't tell them you must give it back to me. Right. Correct. Similar concept, right? But there it's
an equal exchange. I get it, but it's like the idea.
But the idea of trying to trick Hashem, but it doesn't work. Same concept. Yes. So I can't give it to you only on condition you give back to me. But I'm giving you, but only on the condition if you don't give back to me, because that's you didn't really give it, right? So the same thing would be here. Okay. Last piece says the Gemara. The Amar of Yehuda. Let's leave here because the next piece is also back on this. Okay, so we're going to stop on 27b3. Okay.